Could I, could I, could I have everybody take their seats, please? Yeah. I'd like one, you got 45 seconds.
Okay, don't worry about any of that in numbers. Just send it up, just send the bullets, like, don't even worry, try to write the citation, just put like 3 or 4 things together. He did this, this happened, blah, blah, blah. And then just send that up, and then we'll have to, we'll work it, and then we'll have to. They'll likely issue it to him, or maybe I will. Yeah.
I'll tell me in 45 seconds. Unlike everybody else, it'll take me a year and a half.
Right, you're part of the process.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. How was lunch? Pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah, it was good. Okay, so I'd like to resume the meeting from this morning. So at this time, I would like to remind everybody there is a coffee machine, or there's a coffee pot in the back. Are we good now? Very good, thank you, because I did forget. At this time, I'd like to call Commodore Rick Shaw up for an auxiliary sector report, please.
Thank you, Commodore Meyer. I was going to start my speech off with good morning. I'll have to change it a little bit now to good afternoon. So I don't know if it's better to start talking, be the last one before lunch when everybody's anxious to get out, or the first speaker after lunch when everybody's full and it's not back in the swing of things yet. But anyway, Commodore Meyer has asked me to give an update as Auxiliary Sector Coordinator. I am also, with his concurrence, going to give a short, brief update on the DIROC's office. They're actually two entirely different jobs, so thank you. All right, to start off with the Auxiliary Sector Coordinator, for people that don't know what that is, basically the Auxiliary Sector Coordinator coordinates all the activities between the Gold side, the Coast Guard, and the Auxiliary. If the Gold side needs facilities, clergy, food service people, ICS, Incident Command System qualified people, administrative, marine events, anything like that, I'm basically the person to go to and to help coordinate that with the Gold side. I also have 5 coordinators that report to me, the various MSUs and the MSDs, so you can also work directly with them. As long as the job gets done, I'm fine with that. The last 2 years, the activity with the Gold side has been much diminished, obviously, as a result of COVID. There has not been as much going on, unfortunately. Hopefully that'll start to really pick up again. However, in the last 30 days, we have provided a boat for the sector. When they had reserves come down, they needed a facility for towing evolutions and that type of thing. We provided the boat. And also, Rick Garnflow and myself did administrative duties at the recent Mask Rescue Functional Operational Exercise. Had to get that straight. And that was held in Louisville with a lot of different agencies came down. It was a tabletop exercise, so we are still available to help. Let's see. Also, I used to attend the Monday morning sector briefs. That sector that came to an end in 2020 as COVID picked up. But I have started attending the virtual meetings again, and hopefully we'll get back to face-to-face meetings because it's a lot better to be able to recognize a person with a face and be able to talk to them one-on-one. So hopefully that'll start to pick up. Now for my DIROX update. Recently, at the beginning of the year, we moved from sector, the federal building, to the new boathouse. It's a very nice facility there. If you've ever been with the Coast Guard and moved, though, you know it can be a hassle. Getting all your equipment, your computers moved over, all your files, things like that, getting settled in a new office, and then getting all your technology set up. And unfortunately, the auxiliary is not on the top of the food chain for getting our technology set up. But everything is set up, running now, good. We're in that office, and it's working out very well. We do share an office there with the OTO, John Tracy. Currently, we're only allowed one person in the office at a time. I have been working Mondays. Rick Garnflow has been working Thursdays. And John Tracy, the OTO, has been working Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And of course, Monday and Thursday, he works from home. So we are getting good coverage. Rick Garnflow, the other auxiliarist that works in the office with me, primarily does facility input, initial and renewals for boats, planes, and radios. He does most of the equipment distribution and a lot of data input. And I primarily do ID cards, coordination with the gold side, and I also do data input. Okay. I'm skipping around here a little bit. The main question, the thing I get asked the most is ID cards. And it's not really a complicated process. Some people try to make it a complicated process, but basically your ID card is good for 5 years. Before it expires, when you're due for renewal, send me an email with a current application completely filled out. I need everything filled out in that application. And I also need a picture as an attachment. And do not send that attachment from an iPhone or an Apple product that is not compatible. Things you need to know, you must have a red background for the picture. Red designates non-military. If it doesn't have a red background, I cannot use it. Tops, shirts, and blouses for the women. No hats, no sunglasses. Pretty much that. Oh, and send them to my Coast Guard ID, which is george.r.shaw@uscg.mil. That is listed on the OX directory. You know, if you send it to DIROC St. Louis or to the OTO or some other, or my home email address, what happens, it ends up just getting forwarded to my Coast Guard email address. I still get it, but there's a slight delay. So if you can send it directly to my Coast Guard email address, that's the best way to do it. Now, as far as every time I get a request for an ID card, I respond 100% to all the requests I get. And that response is either I have processed your ID card and mailed it, or I was unable to process your ID card because you're still in AP status, which is approval pending, or you have not completed your core training. Core training is a requirement now for an ID card, or I couldn't use the picture or it didn't have a red background. But every request I get gets a response. So you either know your ID card is in the mail or that you need to do something differently to get that ID card, but they are responded 100%. Commodore Meyer has come up with this, and I think it's an outstanding idea. I will be doing ID cards tomorrow right outside the ship's store. So if your ID card is about ready to expire, I do have applications there you can fill out. I will be taking pictures there. I will not be processing the actual ID card because I don't have that equipment here. That's back in the office. But like I say, if you're new and want your initial ID card or you're due for renewal, I'll be there pretty much all day tomorrow taking pictures and applications, so and answering any questions you may have. That's pretty much all I have to say at this point. If anybody has a question about the auxiliary sector coordinator position or anything I do at the DIROC's office or ID cards, feel free to ask me now, or I will be here for the rest of the conference, obviously. I'll be at the fun night tonight. I'll be outside the ship store tomorrow, and I'll be at the Commodore's banquet tomorrow night. So feel free to come up and ask me any questions that you may have. That's pretty much what I have, so.
That's all I need.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commodore. Okay. Operations update. Chris Whitaker. You have the floor.
Standing in for the OTO. His comments are, recurring issues each season are with coxswains taking vessels in tow without notifying sector. So if you're going to take a vessel in tow, remember you have to call sector and let them know you're going to take the vessel in tow. Be sure your coxswains understand that's not an option. They have to do that. Yes, in an emergency, you can take the vessel in tow first and then let sector know. But that's only in an emergency. Otherwise, you have to let sector know before you start the tow. Coast Guard has a new contract for personal locator beacons, and the entire Coast Guard is waiting for the backlog to end. He has over 60 on order and many people waiting for them to arrive. As soon as he gets them in, he'll be getting them out the door to us. So on that, just take a number and stand in line, smile patiently. If you have an old personal flotation device that looks dirty and soiled, this is after you've tried to clean it. Let him know and he'll try to get a replacement to you so you can look sharp out there. He also wants to make a push for coxswains to step out of their comfort zone and become qualification examiners. A few have stepped down because they're aging out or other things like that, but we do need to have others get involved in our program because right now we have some divisions that have multiples. We have one area that there's only one QE, auxiliary QE for the entire area. So we really do need people to step up and be qualification examiners. Some comments he and I talked about that are not strictly on his list. Personal protective equipment reports are due October 15th. Okay? What this means, of course, is if that report does not come in by the 15th or whatever date he and I then shut things off, is those people who are not in a go status will be put in a status where they cannot get orders. Okay, and that's both coxswains and crew. So you have to get that report in, has to be a go. If you can't contact somebody, they're a no-go. On that report, there's only two options, go and no-go. That's it. The function in aux data 2 for personal protective equipment, yes, the tab's there. Don't touch it. It won't let you do anything yet. They're still working out how that's going to work, okay? So just smile and move on. Second one, he and I talked about.
My phone is on silence. That's my ring alarm.
That's all right. We'll stomp on it in a minute or two. Last point, we need qualification examiners. And to be a qualification examiner, they need to be a good coxswain, that is, that say they can do all the coxswain stuff. And it's very helpful if they're also good instructors, because they need to be able to communicate. And if somebody's interested in it, all they need to do is pull out the book, the boat crew book that ends in .51, and fill out the qualification examiner application. Sorry. Just fill out that application, send it to me. The Boat Crew Advisory Board will look it over, and if we give them a thumbs up, they'll get a notice from the OTO that says you have been appointed a qualification examiner in training, and their training process can then start at that point in time. Questions? Nope. Good. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, our next presenter is member training update with Michael Brzezicki.
So this morning you've heard reports on a lot of training activities that have been going on in the district. So I'm going to concentrate on what training opportunities or professional development opportunities are available from national. So I'm not going to try to repeat what you've already heard. To add what you heard this morning, for those folks that are newly elected flotilla commanders or newly elected division commanders, or you know someone who's going to be newly elected, they have a transition guide that's available on the on the leadership development website. The flotilla is in level 2. The division is in level 3. It literally tells them and gives them a checklist. What do you do from the moment you hear the word, congratulations, you've been elected, up to the point where you actually assume the role. It's been there for a while, and people still struggle with that transition. Another thing you heard the word a couple times this morning, succession planning and mentoring. In the same site, the leadership development site, and I believe it's in level 2 and level 3, you have a succession planning guide, which is a guide that actually outlines how to set up a succession program in your flotilla. It's geared towards flotillas, but if you look at it, we extend it out and extrapolate it through the whole thing all the way up to District Commodore. There's a mentoring guide. That mentoring guide is the Coast Guard's mentoring guide that they use prior to going to the online program that they currently have available for their membership. It's been auxiliarized and it fits into our program. And there's a coaching guide. And in those two guides, we actually give you a suggested route. Who's a mentor and who's a coach for each element within leadership, both elected and appointed. So if you're struggling trying to figure out how to get off the ground with succession planning, how to coach members, or how to mentor them, there's material out there for you. Don't try to reinvent stuff. Just take it and run with it. Okay, so now on to some of the more actual training stuff. There's an award available every single year to every single flotilla called the 3-Star Award. Essentially, if your flotilla meets the compliance of having all your members core trained, you can apply for this every single year. And the amount of flotillas that apply for that is very small. It's just a matter of filling out a form and validating that your members are compliant with core training.
If you're an actively growing flotilla, that takes a little more work because you still have people working on it. If you're somewhat of an established flotilla, unless people are all of a sudden falling off because they're hitting those 5-year marks, it should be an easy process every year to get that 3-star award. So now, within the National for member training, there's a lot of member training. There is more member training available through national directorates than there ever has been. It's very confusing because when you're trying to find it, it's a scavenger hunt when you go to the auxiliary website. So I'm going to target you into the training directorate portion of that. So when you open up the auxiliary website, it says directorates, go down the training and open it there. Now I'm going to give you a quick overview. But if you're doing nothing tomorrow between 8 and 12, come and join the division commanders and the vice commanders, because we're going to get into depth with the screen open and show you where all this stuff is. And if we can physically fit you in the room, I see no reason why you can't share in the learning with the division commanders and vice commanders. But anyways, you go to training directorate, and in the menu options, there is a section that says member training. When you open that up, every single directorate is listed with all of their online available training. I will tell you it may or may not be current because things are constantly changing, and I'm not sure who keeps that up to date within the training directorate. But it's sure going to give you 80 to 90% of what's available. If you're interested in PA or PE or RBS, any of that stuff, all the training has got links to everything. If you want to get specifically into OXOP, they have a site too. You can go into OXOP. The OXOP programs are constantly being updated. They're going through a 3-year renewal this year. The goal is by the end of next fiscal year that all of them will be updated. And then they're already simultaneously, as they're approved by BSX, which if you've never gone through an approval process, seems to take forever. When we get approval, then they will start loading them into Moodle and then start doing Moodle courses with instructors so that people can go in virtually through the Moodle platform. And if you don't know what Moodle is, it's basically a college learning management system. It's the #1 college management system in the world and corporate management system. OXOP still does not require proctors except for Part B of the NAV course, because there's a chart involved currently, or for the first go-around with NAV rules. So there's really no excuse for everybody in your flotilla not to be OXOP, unless they just have no bandwidth where they live. Because all the courses are available, they get all the material, and then they take the tests. And for those that think, okay, we dumbed it down, no, we didn't. If you've ever taken an online course, it's more difficult. This is self-paced. And we cut the amount of time in half that you have to do the exam, and we added more questions to it. So if you think you're going to just sit there with a couple booklets open and then just challenge the test, you will be frustrated. And we've had a couple people complain that they've taken the test 15 times and they still can't pass it. It's like, well, maybe you should read the stuff. I hope you read the stuff first.
I did.
Oh, okay. But you really have to know the material because the time has been shortened and the number of questions have been increased. So for those that feel gypped, like, oh, I had to sit with a proctor. Nah, we didn't make it that easy. We just made it more accessible. So OXOP is something we track at the National Directorate. The MT officers get a report pretty much on a monthly basis. The DCOS has started getting it a month or so ago. And we're actually tracking members per 1,000 in each district, and then we compare it to an average. And all these charts have red and green bars. And for anybody who actually sees these things, if you're a red bar, it means you're falling below the average for that particular month. Within the leadership components, the leadership development site is there. Everything drives around the Coast Guard's 28 leadership competencies. So if you've taken any leadership course, you've at least heard that term. And if you remember, they're dealt out in levels of basically of accomplishment, if you will, or at least acknowledgement or knowledge. And it's broken down that way there, what training information is available in level 1 all the way through level 5. For those that are saying, why do we have this leadership certification? Here's the background on why this all came about. If you go back a number of years, and it predates me, so people in the room that have been in the auxiliary longer than me will be aware of this. The Coast Guard tried to take over the process for all of our senior leadership and go into a panel with appointments. You remember that, Rick? No? Okay. Before you. And it got pretty heated, and it continued for a number of years. And the honesty was, they were not satisfied with the caliber of leaders we were putting into senior roles. The stories I heard, this is my interpretation, they embarrassed themselves, the auxiliary and the Coast Guard, lots of times at joint meetings relative to hurricane planning or some deal with a joint task force where we get involved with Southcom and Northcom and stuff like that. We do these training with them. So we've been on a track to convince them that, no, we're serious about leadership development. And yes, you can take all the courses in the world and still be a bad leader. Our theory is, if you go through all of this stuff we've put out there for you, you might actually try to be a good leader. So you can get certified at the 5 levels corresponding with the 28 leadership competencies by taking Coast Guard auxiliary courses, and it starts with the Flotilla Leadership course, which you have a group of people here doing. And it's supplemented with FEMA courses. They're not ICS. These are courses from their leadership executive leadership courses that they have, that we've tapped into. And you go through the process and you work your way up. Typically, C schools, because of funding, are only really offered to target audiences because we only have X amount of money. So I'll use DCAP as an example. The DCAP course is normally only open to brand new DCAPs. So some of you DCAPs this year, anybody who was new this year? Okay. You went virtual because yeah. Oh, you haven't done anything yet. Okay, so last year, N-Train got canceled, and then NACON got canceled, and all the money got canceled, so we went virtual. The nice thing about virtual is there's no money. So we blew the course open because the second priority in that DCAP class is national deputy directors. They've never been invited to that course. We had no money. The next piece to the priority 2 were district staff officers. They've never been invited to that course because we didn't have the money. We are now meeting the responsibility of all of our priority groups by going virtual. We can fill the classes with people who are not target audience. Conceptually, everybody in your flotilla could be level 4 certified and not be even close to being elected as a DCAP. And you might say, why? Well, wouldn't it be good to have a candidacy of DCAPs that have already prepared themselves by taking the courses? That never happened before because we didn't have the money. So we're trying to kick this thing down and make it more accessible and to really show to the Coast Guard we're trying. The other thing is, over the last, I'm going to say 10 years now, all the Coast Guard auxiliary leadership courses now use Coast Guard material. So when you take the AMLOC class, you're taking the Coast Guard Senior Leadership Principles and Skills course. When you take Aux LAMS, you're taking Coast Guard LAMS. It's their material. You're training the same way they do. The third thing to this is we currently only have one auxiliary leadership course that's approved or for college credits, Aux LAMS. This year we started the process, and by the middle of 2022, Aux LAMS will of course be recertified, AMLOC, ALOC, which is the DCAP course, and then the ASOC course, which is the senior course, and now the OXO 4 class will all have gone through review by FORSCOM, so it's an approved Coast Guard course, and review by ACE, which is the Accreditation Council on Education, and hopefully we will have college credits for all of our courses. Okay, and I'm looking around this class, and I'm sure all of you are going to be freshmen in college next year, and you want college credits. But think of this. You're dealing with Sea Scouts. So they go take Ox Lambs and get 3 college credits. Now, the 3 college credits depends on the accepting institution. It's like a transfer credit. What's that worth to them? What's a college credit cost today? You're an older person. I mean, you're a professional. You're a nurse or an attorney or an accountant, and you need CEUs. Well, a certain portion of those don't have to be technical to that job. What are those 3 college credits worth? So we are now offering some value added to that, whether you need it for CEUs or for you're a newer person and you're a younger person, and this is a chance for some college credits. So that's going on there. BQC2 is stable and up and running. That's part of level 1. And for those that say, oh, I'm grandfathered in, I don't have to take it. Well, yeah, that's true. But if you want level 1, you have to take it. The auxiliary procedures course, which is a, and I'll admit, it's not a very exciting course. It's how to use the Ox manual, which is your #1 leadership and management tool. And it's the only way for us to stop urban legend. That's being enhanced, made more interesting. We're throwing in historic videos that actually have nothing to do with the manual. But we figured, hey, at least you'll get something out of it if you hear about what we did in World War II or how we trained to be sabotage agents on the New York harbors to prevent bombing of blowing up of munition ships and stuff. I don't know if you guys knew that we were working as spies in World War II. In the leadership development section, there's a history section. Go in there. We were doing some really cool stuff, which they wouldn't allow us to do now, I don't think. AFLC is offered on ground as you're getting here. It's also offered virtually. You can go to their website to sign up. During boating season, they run 1 cohort every month. During non-boating season, 2. We put through between 60 and 120 people a month through that course. That's been going on for well over a year. And we max out every single class. And they put roughly 25 roll in, and then they roll it up because they've used multiple instructors. If you ever taught online, you can't teach 60 people online. And this is a instructor interactive course. So they'll have 5 instructors. They'll split up the class, and one instructor's in charge of so many people, and the other one's got the other ones. So they get the same attention level, but from different people, and we're not burning out volunteer instructors. Ox Lambs is available online. We've gone 5 cohorts so far. That one runs 7.5 weeks. AFLC is 4 weeks. That's 7.5 weeks, twice a week, 2 hours a week, 2 hours a night. We do get people who sign up and then they realize, I'm not going to sit and watch Zoom. I actually have to do work. And they usually drop out after the second night. There's currently a Part A session going on that's designed just for 9 Central. So if you guys want to have Ox Lambs classes, it doesn't cost any money. We can build Ox Lambs classes for a division. And you might say, oh, in those classes we limit to 25. You might say, well, I don't have 25 people. So let's get your 10. We'll throw it out to the rest of the auxiliary and backfill it with 15 people from other parts of the country. We actually, and this is hard for me to say because I'm the on-ground guy, we actually are getting better student reviews from the online courses than we did from the on-ground courses. And they've got their own LinkedIn page now. So Oxlam students are all collaborating already as a flotilla leader or a flotilla leader wannabe. They're building the networks, which I was surprised to find that out. Also, some of them host their own offline classes, so they're prepared for the next week. That never happened in an on-ground class. AMLOC's being held online. That's the course for division commanders. That's essentially the Coast Guard SLIPS course, Senior Leadership Principles. That is a commercial product. It's the Leadership Challenge. If you want to go online and look up the Leadership Challenge, there'll be lots of places in the country where you can spend $1,200 and go there and buy some materials, and they'll do a weekend seminar with you. You're going to get 7.5 weeks. 7.5 weeks is the magic number we use to get the equivalency of a 3-credit course. So I teach at Central Michigan. They accelerate their master's programs. 3 credit classes run 7.5 weeks online. The other thing they're adding, which we couldn't do on ground, is they throw in 1 extra night, and they actually bring in a graduation speaker. And some of the speakers have been people high up in the auxiliary, and we've had a lot of captains and commanders from the Coast Guard come in and speak about the importance of leadership training. And that's kind of cool, too. So that's AMLOC. ALOC, which is the DCAP course, they've done 3 cohorts already, and they've got 2 more in the planning. Now you're sitting there, how do I get into all these classes? Well, if you go to the Training Directorate website again, there's one of the menu items says C Schools. Click on there. On the bottom of that, where the calendar used to sit, now it says there are no C School courses for the remainder of the year except for AUX 13. No, AUX 17, pardon me, AUX 17. Go below that, there's student support sites. Go into any one of them, and there'll be an application you fill out, and that puts you in the queue. That's for AUXLAMS, AMLOC, and ALOC. And the classes fill fast, believe it or not. ASOC, which currently doesn't apply to anybody in here except for Chris, is a 20-month online course supplemented with 5 days at the academy. In this class, we funded another 5 days. So this coming fiscal year, they will spend 5 days on the island in Alameda and get to visit with the Coast Guard in an operational mode. And part of the planning is to get them on a national security cutter, meet with people from the district. There's a DIROC's office right there. So they're going to have a lot of interaction with different levels within the Coast Guard, whereas at the academy, it was pretty much an intense reaction with all of the people from the academy, but they were all in leadership training capacities. So now they're going to meet the operators. There's an air station in San Francisco. So they're going to have a chance to be with operators. And that's 20 months online. They meet monthly, where they bring in value-added speakers, they call it. And you guys have had everybody and his uncle in there, admirals, commodores. They bring in some really interesting speakers. And what's it, an hour, Randy? The value-added training for ASOC, an hour? About an hour. And you get to meet these people virtually, but it's all done via Zoom. Or no, you guys use GoToMeeting, I think. The other classes are on Zoom. So we're alive and well. So if anybody's out there saying there's no leadership training available, come to tomorrow, and you can get to see. There is a lot of it. That's all I have. Oh, can I field a question?
Field a question.
Yes, sir.
Are there any plans to have a online C-School for
Oh, that's AUX 10, right? Yes. Okay. This is brand new. I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell anybody.
Go ahead. They
But
won't
there
say.
are emails kicking around right now because they haven't held a live AUX 10 class, which is the AUX Data 2 class. They haven't had that class in 2 years now. And so there's a ton of emails around about can they get approved to do it virtually? And then eventually there'll be emails about how do you construct it. And the training directorate has a whole division designed just to do that so they can help that directorate, I guess it's the C directorate, help them actually design a Moodle course or a Zoom course or however they want to deliver it. So there is emails, and that's only within the last 2 days. So there are people starting to get concerned that the IS officers are not getting training. So they're aware of that, and they're working on it, and right now there's a select group that these emails are kicking around. I see another hand.
Well, I'm just saying that on the website, it says AUX 10 class data is scheduled for 2022 to be announced. And underneath the virtual AUX 10B class dates for 2022 to be announced as well.
Okay, so it's been approved apparently. I'm behind the curve on this one.
It looks like they're just working on it now.
Yes, they are working on it. In 2022, we are planning. We have been told what our tentative budget is. There'll be no funded C schools the first quarter of the fiscal year, which is the last calendar quarter. And part of the reason is they're changing over a lot of the systems relative to travel. And the fear is it'll get all confused, and there's no sense confusing this any more than we are. But there are already stuff being scheduled out for the first quarter. There are online leadership classes scheduled at DTRAIN, should that be held, for Oxlams Part A, Amlock, and ALOC. And then the Part B would be held, for Oxlams, would be held at NACON, as well as another AMLOC and another ALOC. So we're planning, and I don't have any crystal ball or insight on whether or not these things are held. I get the same email you do, it's been canceled. But you still plan just in case. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much for that time.
Thank you, Michael. And next up, our last item on this morning's agenda. Anthony Waters from Division 7 is going to give us a Division 7 Spring D-Train presentation.
I'm not sure how that got on the screen.
Huh? Guy back there, you're on. You're on. There you go.
Yeah, but things on here.
He loaded it for you.
Oh, okay. I got it now. All right.
Are we okay?
Yes.
Are we okay?
I'm like, I'm holding it in my hand, but it's on the screen.
Hey, that's Patrick for you.
I was a little worried. I was like, all right. Now that the amazement I had is now gone because the magic has been explained to me. It's all good. So, spring 2022, we're going to be doing this all over again in my hometown, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Hopefully I can get this to work the way I want it to work. Oh, wait. Well, it's funny you mentioned that.
No.
All right, why aren't we moving? Oh, because this is a stupid transition slide thing. Okay. Now, finally, so what comes to mind when you think of Pittsburgh? Yep. Crickets. So, is it the world-class sports teams? Steelers, Penguins, there's a baseball team maybe, but, or is it the great food? This is supposed to be before lunch, so. But this is from Permane Brothers. It's a sandwich that they put fries and coleslaw on, and that's apparently a Pittsburgh thing. Other people that I've explained this to did not understand the concept, and that's what they do. They put, so I can go on, but I know Matt wants us to move faster, so I can explain that to you later. Or could it be the inclines, the oldest operating inclines in the country? Or we're all coasties. Is it the Three Rivers, where the Ohio starts, which is where a lot of our navigational waterways for our district come from? Or could it be some of the history? Now, Lewis and Clark, that started in Pittsburgh. Some thinks it's St. Louis. You are being correct. It is in Pittsburgh. The Smiley, that little dot, emoticon, that was founded in CMU in the 1980s. Those that like Big Macs, I don't like Big Macs, but if you do, it's made in Pittsburgh. And the funniest thing here is Pittsburgh has an H. Why doesn't it have an H? Yes, because other places had an H, and they said you can't have the H because it takes up too much ink. I don't really know I know the real story, but I always think that's funnier to say. It took up too much ink on a paper. But it's because Pittsburgh said, no, we spell it with an H, it's just how it is. We're going to keep it. And it was a big thing, but I can explain that to people at a later date. Or is it the city of bridges? Pittsburgh has the most number of bridges of anywhere else in the entire world, including Venice. There's like 462. I've driven across probably all of them at some point in my time in Pittsburgh. So there's a theme to some of this. Begin Spring D-Train will be in Pittsburgh, April 7th through the 9th of 2022. And for the longest time, I kept saying August 7th through the 9th, so I'm glad I fixed it on this slide. I hope I don't have any more that have the wrong date on it. And will be held at the Pittsburgh Airport Marriott. It's over 300 rooms. They have a pool. There's a fitness center, for all those that ate too many Big Macs because they're started in Pittsburgh. Free parking, and does have a free airport shuttle. So if you're flying in, you can just get off the plane, get on the shuttle, come to the airport, or from the airport to the hotel, and you're good to go. There are plenty of things to do by the hotel, but you have to have a car because it's just how it is. I guess if you give the van drivers enough money, they might be convinced to take you somewhere, but don't tell them I said that, but that might be the case. Or, yeah, make a friend. And it's funny you mentioned that because our theme of the event is building bridges. So building bridges I'm using this in both the literal and figurative meaning. On our fun night, there will be a competition where you will build an actual bridge. Out of material, we have not yet determined. It depends. We will think about, but also, as was mentioned, it's an opportunity for you to network and make friends. You flew in, you don't have a car, you came in with someone, make a friend, go up to the mall. There's an IKEA for anyone who likes to go to IKEA. They're apparently a big thing for the Canadians to come down. I don't know why, but they have one. There'll also be, throughout the event, we'll have random trivia questions or trivia information scattered throughout the hotel in the meeting rooms, because there's a lot of history and a lot of fun things that came out of Pittsburgh or that still happen in Pittsburgh. And of course, for the fun night as well, our division commander is a big history buff, so come dressed as your favorite historical character. Now, it could be a real or an imagined character. I mean, do as you will. The other thing, this room has a name on it, right? There's a couple of names. I don't remember all of them. One was the Earhart, right? So Amelia Earhart actually crash landed near Pittsburgh when she was flying. So that just connects everything together, right? With that, I hope to see you there, April 7th through 9th, 2022 in Pittsburgh. And I'm all done. Thank you. All right. Yeah, maybe.
We'll take 10 minutes. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break, be back at 1400. There's coffee on the back corner if you want some coffee.
Yeah.
because I really don't. Okay, I'll hang out. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Could I have everybody take their seats, please? Okay, we're getting into our afternoon session, so I will release the decaps from the head table and the chief of staff. You go sit wherever you want. Yeah, you can go way back there and grab a nap.
What is it that you said?
Sure he did.
If you hear snoring, it's not me.
Patrick, we're ready for you when you're ready.
I just got to pull my mask and pull that iron there.
Can't believe you got it so wicked. The ship did it.
Skip took too long.
We're going to have Patrick Brown come up and give us a technology update. And then we're going to go with the Flotilla Division Financial how-to. Then we'll have our DSO LP, Keith Blosser, come up and do some Robert's Rules meeting management. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Hey, everybody. How are we doing?
Good.
All right. Let's see if I can figure this out. Everything is backwards from all the different computers that I use. Oopsie. I'm off to a great start here. Okay. So just want to go through a couple of updates on some of the technology that we've been working towards and using over the last couple of years. So the flash report should be nothing new to most people in here. We did make a pretty substantial change, or addition, I should say, from the last D-Train to where we are now. We've talked about the addition of credit card processing for registration fees for, gosh, probably over the last 2 or 3 D-Train cycles. And through a pretty substantial effort from a bunch of people, we were able to implement that moving into this evolution. So that was a huge, huge accomplishment that I'm very proud of. I want to thank Mark for his help as well to get that implemented. But the interesting thing for me to see is that almost 90% of those who were here with us this weekend have chosen to pay their registration fees via credit card, which has been a substantial reduction in the administrative burden to receive checks, process checks, and it really has been a significant lift in the overall security process. We're having to mail checks back and forth and deal with that kind of stuff. One of the goals that we established was to offset the cost of credit card processing through the use of the donations that we added a couple of years ago. And we fell a little bit short. When I say a little bit short, like $2.50 short of having basically a flat processing load. So I'm going to go ahead and call that an overall success to see 90% of our fees, 90% of our attendees use the credit card feature, and then to only have to worry about $2.50 roughly in overall processing fees. The nice thing from my perspective is we have a system set up where if anybody exceeds the charge average, which is $195. That's where the average charge is. Basically, for 2 people to register with fully loaded meals, a text alert goes out, and I receive that alert. If anybody charges more than that, I get notified that, hey, something weird has happened. And we had one instance of that going off. It was going into a weekend. And I looked at the system and I said, ooh, this is a little bit of an anomaly here. What's going on? And someone had miskeyed an amount when they went to go run their credit card. And Lynn and I connected and said, hey, did someone really mean to process a charge for X amount of meals? Is someone bringing a large number of people? And Lynn made a few phone calls and said, no, that's not the case, and able to immediately refund that amount of money. Before, we would not be able to have that rapid communication piece. So there are a lot of safeguards built into there, so we're able to immediately refund members' money. So that's a pretty cool thing from my perspective, to be able to immediately notify the administrator that, hey, there's been an issue, we need to go ahead and refund that. On the COVID side, for anybody who was canceled because of a COVID concern, we're able to immediately process that refund. The system says 7 to 10 days, but I've received confirmation from a few members that within 2 business days they've received their fees back, which is certainly a lot quicker than having to go ahead and mail a check back to somebody, or if Mark's got to issue a check from the district account. It's a much more expeditious way to go ahead and do that. There's also a few things that we've added to the system since the last time that we spoke. And as anybody knows, I like data. It's a fun thing for me to look at. This is one thing that I really had a fun time to take a look at. So I know this is an eye chart, and if you know me, you don't like to throw everybody an eye chart to take a look at when you're 45 feet away. But what this does is this tracks the organizational unit over time. So this goes back to 2008, and it tracks who has attended a D-Train and from which flotilla going back to 2008. Does it really show anything? I mean, it could if you really are curious, but if you're super interested to know, hey, which flotillas have the strongest showing of attendance at a D-Train over time, that's kind of cool to see. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we can also take a look at Coast Guard Civilian, NEXCOM, and Active Duty. So it gives a real nice breakdown to see where our largest number of attendees are coming from. And then this is the real eye chart down here, just because of the way the graph actually populated. But everybody in this room does have access to this report. We did send out the information how to access it through Lynn sent that out to all the DCDRs, and we can go ahead and do that again if you are not familiar how to do that. There's a couple other tabs I want to go through quickly, and then I'll show you one other pretty cool thing, at least pretty cool to me. The meal pivot. This is something new. Again, everybody has access to this, so I don't really think I'm showing any kind of secrets here. This just allows us to quickly see who has chosen which meal, right? And the reason I'm showing you this for any of the current division commanders or anybody who's considering coming up and running for division commander down the road, this allows us to see, hey, which meal, which protein is really the most selected over time, right? So if someone is thinking, hey, maybe we should do, I don't know, a tofurkey down the road, right? I don't know, something real outside the box. We can go back all the way to 2008 and say, well, 87% of our attendees are either going to choose, well, literally 87% of our attendees are going to choose beef. It's beef and chicken are the number 2. And oddly enough, vegetarian is a close number 3 right behind chicken. And I was kind of surprised by that. I thought it was going to be fish, but there's a lot of vegetarian entrees that are chosen. So we have a lot of data that's in this report that, again, everybody has access to. So as you go through the planning process, you're able to see what's our overall spend per attendee, what are the meal choices per attendee, and really what are people looking to, or what have they selected in the past, so we can make those decisions and not choose something that nobody is really going to take part in, and it can potentially be a cost for us, as opposed to being able to either break even or hopefully turn a little bit of a profit and put that money back into the account. Let's see here. The other one is the text pivot. This one's kind of cool. We had almost 95% of our members have opted in for the text notification system, and that has grown progressively since we rolled that out about 2 years ago. So we can send out emergency alerts, or we can send out other little quirky alerts like, hey, the ship store is open, right? So think local, shop local. It doesn't get much more local than right out behind this room right here. So hint, hint, Teresa's over there. And right out behind this door is the hospitality room. So there's a great opportunity for us to go and say hello and see what's over there. She got got some really cool stuff. I know she did her presentation earlier. She's going to do another presentation at some point this weekend, but that's a really great way to go say hello and see what we've got. Okay, so one of the big things that we did over the last couple of months is we've rolled out a D-Train specific website. We've corralled a lot of information in one hopefully easy to access web portal. So it used to be that there was a registration site, the hotel site was somewhere else, there was this weird flash report thing, then there was the YouTube piece, there's all this stuff was all over the place, right? So we put together one website that you could now just go to, and the address is USCG Auxiliary D8ER.info. And I'll go ahead and I'll give you some more information on how to get that. But everybody should have been able to go to that website because that's all that we've published so far to register for D-Train. So that should not be too foreign to anybody in this room. But it's basically one central D-Train portal for everybody to access all things that are D-Train. Right, so there's a bunch of tabs across top, registration, there's YouTube, there's the flash report, and this is what I just showed here. There is a utility where you can log in, username and password, click login, and that'll give everybody in the room the ability to access what I just showed you. So if you're interested in pulling some of that data, that's how you go ahead and do that. Attendee payment status report, this one is now kind of obsolete. It's like put this together 6 months ago, and then we rolled out credit cards, so now it's literally kind of obsolete because once you get the confirmation or you see the credit card charge go through, now it's right there. But this is for anybody that wants to know, hey, did I actually send in a check or did I actually pay for D-Train? I can't remember. You can go here and take a look in the report and see. If you're green, you're paid. If you're red, you're either on will call status or there was a cancellation, something like that. But it's a great thing for our members to jump in here and take a look and make sure that they have made their they have their account current. We do have 6 accounts that are outstanding. There's a handful of people who are on will call status, which is either extended to our gold attendees, or there's a few members who were either registered late and they're going to bring a check with them. So that count is accurate as of today. So. The other thing, we talked over the years about where do we put pictures? What do we do with all the photos that we take? This site will allow us to put photos in one central spot from D-Train. Gerlinde sent me a whole bunch of photos from last time in Cincinnati. Now here's the funny thing. All the photos that we took last time, because we used what's called a DSK or a downstream key, which requires a green screen, they look great on YouTube, but we all look funny because we're standing in front of this big green screen, right? So that was kind of the double-edged sword that I didn't even think about. So if anybody likes to dabble in Photoshop and wants to go through and key out about 200 different photos and put some nice backdrops behind us, it's a very easy process to do because it's literally a green screen and that's what it's designed to do. But you can click here and access that library. So all the photos are there. So as we go through this process, you can send photos to me through Dropbox, or Google Drive. I can share this link if you like, and you can upload them all into this one spot. Now, here's the thing. We're going to run out of space really, really quick if we start to take 200, 300, 400 pictures over the next couple of rotations. And we'll have to solve for that problem as we get to it. But the goal is to put all of our D-Train photos on this one website. Okay, so the next phase of this website is to eventually move away from having to do a hard copy program or hard copy handouts. What we'd like to do is to be able to do a new link for every D-Train where you can go to this website and go, oh, we're going to be in Pittsburgh, right? Or we're going to be in Dayton, we're going to be in Cincinnati or Nashville, wherever we're going to be. And you go, okay, I'm going to click on this tab and we're under construction, right? So here's where we are, under construction. But the idea is for us to have Commodore's Banquet programs or the flyer for Fun Night or the agendas, have all that stuff be populated in this one area where you can go and click on it from a phone or a laptop, or if you want to print it a day or so in advance, we can go ahead and do that. And again, have this site be the one central area for all things D-Train. At the end of that program, we can go ahead and download all that information and archive it. So again, we know where everything for D-Train 4 years ago lives. It lives on that one site. Where right now, who knows where everything is, right? There's a box that Commodore's got, there's a box that Lynn's got, there's a box that I've got somewhere, right? Trying to put all those boxes online so that we know where all this stuff is. Okay. So the last thing that I want to quickly go over is YouTube. So when I came up here, we had 8 people who were online watching our broadcast. So hello, thank you all for joining us online. We had people who jumped on the stream this morning at 7:30 a.m. which is in my mind amazing, because we're basically in a business meeting. So kudos to the folks who joined us this morning to watch a business meeting, and that number is going to only continue as the weekend goes on, especially tomorrow as we get into the online learning academy. So I'm really excited to see what those analytics tell us. If we follow the same pattern that we did last rotation when we were in Cincinnati, we should see probably 2 to 3 times that number. We had over 100 views at our peak 6 months ago. So I'm really excited now that word has gotten out, and we have almost 3 times the amount of subscribers. So as soon as we go live, everybody who subscribes they get alerted that we are live. So we should see hopefully a huge increase in that number. What we've also done is we've created a QR code. So I've got a whole bunch of these cards. Feel free to take as many as you want, pass them out amongst all your members when you get back. Everybody was asking, hey, how do I see the broadcast? How do I go on YouTube? Where do I have to go and find this? Well, now we've got a very easy way to do it. You can scan this card with your mobile device, Android, iPhone, whatever you want to do. You can scan it with a little, your camera on your laptop. You can also type in the web address if you want to. It'll take you directly to the YouTube site. Very easy to do. And again, as soon as you subscribe to it, you're going to get alerted as soon as we either upload new content or as soon as we go live, right? So that's the whole point. A few weeks ago, I sent out a note to a few people and said, hey, we're 7 subscribers away from being able to change our YouTube channel to some real long, wonky address that YouTube gave us to a vanity name. So we were able to breach that number. We needed 100 subscribers to do that. So now we're able to change our YouTube name to youtube.com/USCG Auxiliary D8ER, which is pretty cool. So now things are starting to align in that same naming convention, and that's the ultimate goal. So the email convention is the same as the DTRAIN site, the same as our YouTube presence, and ultimately we're going to continue with that same naming convention, so it's all easily recognizable as we continue to go down the technology path. So we've been busy trying to continually push everything as we go more towards a digital platform, and our members seem to be responding in that way as well as we get ever-increasing online viewership. So that's what I've got. Any questions for me about the digital program, what we've been doing, and where we're looking to go? Perfect. I nailed it.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I'll leave some of these up here if anybody wants to grab them on the way out. Who's up next? Is it Keith? Mark.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Next up is Mark Diva. Diva. He's such a diva. Oh, come on. Diva.
Thank you, boss. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Hello, virtuals. We are so glad that you're joining us from the virtual world. This is wonderful. We really need to encourage our members to join us online. What a great opportunity. They don't have to, yes, we should come to Dayton and have a good time, but, there we go. Wow, what a great opportunity. I did take advantage of the Cincinnati, and I did participate virtually. It was wonderful. It really was, and we really need to get that information down to our folks. My apologies, Bob. I'm going to steal your thunder for just a second. When we close, you need to go to the hospitality room, okay? There is a raffle. There is a 50-50. There's a silent auction, okay? Oh, and if you haven't seen that American flag art that's there on the wooden platform, there should be, a couple $100 bid on that sucker, because that is just really, really nice. But the 50-50 raffle is tonight. So if you want to take advantage of that, now don't buy any tickets, because I've already got mine. I'm going to win, so there you go. But anyway, they're going to do that drawing tonight. So make sure you, if you want to take advantage of that and take part of that, do that before, just when we shut down and before we start the dinner process that night. They're trying to help your finances, and that. I like the guy from National. He's got free stuff. We don't have to pay. Look at all that training, and it's all free. It doesn't cost us a penny. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. But we're going to talk about Flotilla and Division Financial.
okay? I want to just talk about a couple of things regarding that. Chief of Staff said when the staff officers come up, we should give a quick little bio on ourselves. So here's a little bio. I joined the auxiliary in July of 1976, okay? Not 1876, but 1976, okay? I'm currently the DSOFN here in ADR. Been doing that since 1989. I'm also the flotilla staff officer for my flotilla, and I've been doing that since 1980. And I'm also on the national staff. I actually work in the Auxiliary Association. But those of us who are auxiliaries who are in the Auxiliary Association, we have a national staff designation for that as well. My highest past offices was the Chief of Staff here in the district back in 87 and 88, and I was privileged to serve as the National Commodore's aide for 3 National Commodores in the early to mid-1900s in that. In the real world, I'm Vice President and Senior Consultant at ProBank Austin. We're a bank consulting firm located in Louisville, Kentucky, and we provide training and consulting to community-sized financial institutions, banks, savings, loans, and credit unions. We tell them that we can help them from the day they decide to buy a bank to the day they decide they don't need it anymore and sell a bank, kind of like owning a boat. You know, the best day of a boat owner is the day you buy the boat and the day you sell the boat, right? Well, from the day you decide to buy the bank and sell the bank, we can help you. We can help you with training. We can help you with compliance and all of that. And so that's what I do in my spare time when I'm not doing auxiliary things as well. So there we go. So I just want a couple of things. Obviously, we need to have all of our money in accounts so it can be tracked. It needs to be at a federally insured institution, so either a bank or a savings loan. So we'll talk about that for just a second, setting it up. We talked with the board last night about dues, my favorite topic, but just want to talk briefly about structure and timing. We do need to make financial reports, and we do need to do budgets, so I want to talk about that. And of course, we want to talk about the annual financial report, the mandated 70-25, and I want to go through some of the nuances of that as well. Our books need to be audited every year, and just have a couple of potpourri things to talk about as well. So 4 or 5 hours, that's all it should take. So anyway, this comes right out of the auxiliary manual. I couldn't have typed it any better, so I just copied it. But all of our funds shall be promptly deposited to accounts containing the appropriate unit designation in the words U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. And we are allowed to use the National Auxiliary's EIN. Okay, so when you establish a bank account at a bank or a credit union, they're going to ask you for that taxpayer identification. We can use that number, that 5215000576. We're allowed to use that number as well. Now, just a quick note, if you're going to put it into an interest-bearing account, and if you've not styled the interest-bearing account with the words United States spelled out, but instead being abbreviated, okay, you might, if it's interest-bearing, you may end up getting what's called a B notice from the IRS that says, hey, the name doesn't match the EIN. Because when the auxiliary applied for the national EIN, they spelled out United States, okay? And the only reason I know that is because the district got a B notice, and they were going to start backup withholding on our accounts. And so I just changed the style, and that made the IRS happy. And we try to keep the IRS happy whenever possible as well. Second bullet point on that slide, oh, and by the way, I'm going to send this program to your SOFNs, so that they will have that. I'll email that out to them. So those of you taking notes furiously, you don't have to do all that. I will distribute that to the SOFNs, and hopefully they will pass that down to their FSOs and that. But when we go in and establish the account for the first time, or maybe even if you've had the account for a while, you may all of a sudden get a document, a certification document from the bank or the credit union asking for certification of beneficial ownership. And they're looking for control prong information. Don't panic on that. This comes out of the whole, what they call the CDD piece that all the banks are working on, the customer due diligence piece that started 3 years ago. There's 4 elements to it. The second one, though, is the identifying and verifying the identity of beneficial owners, the humans who own or control the legal entities. Now, obviously, as an unincorporated association, there's no ownership here, and they understand that. And actually, as an unincorporated association and as a government agency, we're really not even required to provide control prong information. But some of the regional banks are asking anyway. They just have it in their mind that, okay, we need control prong. Okay, unincorporated association, we need control prong. So if this thing shows up in the mail, don't panic. It's okay. Because you know what? The control prong, the person who has significant responsibility to control, manage, or direct, well, that can be the finance officer, okay? Now, how do I know that they're mailing them out? Because we got one as the district. And I thought, okay, now I can go and I can tell this guy, I've been teaching this for 25 years and I know what I'm talking about, and we're really not, we really don't have to do this. And then I thought, wait a minute, I can sign this form. And so I just signed it and say, oh, they're just trying to close the box and that. So don't panic if this thing comes up, okay? They're just trying to close the box and that. So they're looking for the one person who has significant responsibility to control, manage, or direct, okay? And that's all they're doing with this. And the form may look like something like that, okay? It may look something like that. And it'll just have your name, date of birth, address, social security number from that standpoint as well. So don't panic. Standard form makes them happy because they've closed the box, which keeps the federal examiners happy, which is what everybody is trying to do as well, okay? Now, given the fact that the general public really doesn't understand us and what we do, if possible, when we establish a new account, it's always easier if you go to a bank where you're already doing business, or you go to a credit union where you're already doing business, because they already know you. You're already their client. You're already their member or their customer. And so it's a little easier as opposed to just going in cold from that standpoint. But if the new accounts personnel ask for some kind of documentation, you know what I found is helpful? There's an auxiliary policy statement that the commandant authors, okay? It's right out there at the chief director's website. And that's a really nice document that explains what we are, okay, and who we are. And it's always good to provide that to them, and that will sometimes help. I also find the first few pages in the auxiliary manual sometimes helps, because it talks about the legal authority of the auxiliary, and it just gives them some documentation to feel comfortable that we really are who we say they are as well. And if you need any of this, if any of your folks need any of this information, I'll be more than happy to get those specific pages for them as well. Remember, though, auxiliary monies must be deposited into a federally insured financial institution. Okay, so you're either looking for the FDIC symbol if it's a bank, or the NCUA insurance symbol if it's a credit union as well. Okay. Now, let's talk about disbursements. Disbursements of funds must always be used to further the general purpose of the auxiliary. Again, I'm copying it right out of the manual. I couldn't have typed it any better. All right, and it's right there. All right. General funds should not be accumulated without some definite goal in mind for future disbursement intended to promote authorized activities of the auxiliary. Auxiliary unit funds may only be spent or committed with the concurrence of the appropriate majority of the voting members of the unit unless provisions authorizing the expenditure or commitment are in the auxiliary unit's standing rules. Auxiliary unit funds may be dispersed with the signature of the unit finance officer and or the unit elected officer as authorized in the unit standing rules. Okay? So just a couple of thoughts on disbursements. Come on, there we go. Unit monies are there to be spent and used to support the unit, the members, and the organization. But keeping tens of thousands of dollars in accounts does nothing to maintain and grow the organization. Growing their bank accounts is not the goal for unit monies. We're supposed to use, these are our members' monies, and we're supposed to use it for the membership and to further auxiliary activities. Now, with a few exceptions, the unit can spend funds, however, they vote to spend them, so long as it supports the unit, ideally through the annual budgeting process. See, that's the most logistical way to spend money, is you pass the budget, and then you understand what you're going to do or what the plans are, and you go with that way. Now remember, I'm going to say this a couple of times with that last bullet point. Public education course fees may not be used for social activities. Right out of the auxiliary manual, okay? We just can't do it, all right? We can't have a party on PE fees. So we really need to segregate those, all right? Now, whether you actually put them in a separate account or whether you just keep a separate ledger within your own books, but PE fees may not be used for social. They can be used for other auxiliary activities, but not for social, okay? And that's also the same way if someone is making any contributions to your unit, but they're contributing it through auxiliary association, because that's the 501c3. The auxiliary association is the 501c3 that's set up to take contributions, and then they'll forward that back to your unit. Well, those always come with the tag, may not be used for social activities. We actually had a member of our flotilla who, because his employer encouraged civic involvement in that, was making monthly contributions, which ended up coming back to the flotilla. Well, we couldn't have party on that money, but we could do it. We could spend it for other things. So you just have to keep track of those monies separately as well. Okay? So other monies, of course, the main monies we get are dues. Now, we operate on a calendar year basis for finances, and most importantly, we operate on a calendar year basis for dues. Okay, members appearing on the rolls of the unit at year end are accounted for and billed for annual dues. All right. New members added during the first 3 quarters of the year are billed at a pro rata rate based on the quarter added to the rolls when they go on the rolls in AP status. Units at each level assess dues at the dollar amount based on the vote of that appropriate board of that unit. National sets the national dues, the district sets the district dues, the division set the division dues, and then the flotillas set the flotilla dues. So, simple. National bills the district bills the divisions bill the flotillas, and the flotillas bill the members. But it has to start at the lowest level now. Okay? It has to start now because we need to know who's going to stay. Right? Some people may decide to take retirement. Some people may just decide, okay, it's time to get out, let's disenroll. Well, we have to know there so that if they're not going to stay, we can get them off the rolls so we don't get billed for them. All right? And just a quick note and a praise to the XCOM who's all left. ADR has not raised district dues like forever. It's been such a long time. We charge $6 a head for annual dues, okay? Now, National's been raising dues, yes, they have, but the district has not raised dues in a long time. So, just a breakdown on this slide, National bills $24 a head, we add $6, and so I'll bill your SOFNs $30 for annual dues. Now, pro rata then, in the first quarter, we bill $450, the national bills $18, so it's $22.50 for the new members that are added during the first quarter. $3, national gets $12, so I bill you $15. And in the third quarter, okay, so if you want to save some money, enroll them in the third quarter, you still get credit for this year, but it's $1. We charge $1.50, national charges $6. For a total of $750. Now, anybody added to the rolls in AP status in the fourth quarter, they get a free ride, but they're picked up in the annual dues process as well. The challenge is, of course, that everything is based on flotilla membership at calendar year end. Okay, it's just that simple. Okay, whatever the number is on 12/31, that's where we're going to get billed. Okay, flotillas need to be billing now for 2022. Should the member wish to retire or disenroll, they must be out of AUX Data 2 before 12/31. It's critically important that the FN, the FSO-FNs, and the FSO-ISs track the removal of the members wishing to depart because, as you see in red, it's only when the member has been systematically removed from the AUX Data system is when that member is removed and truly gone for dues billing purposes. So it's incumbent on our local units to make sure that if these guys are leaving, and you know it's their choice, but that we get them out of the system. Okay, I did distribute this earlier this year to the SOFNs just as a possible dues timeline. Okay, so the first billing for 2022 should have already gone out. All right, we're still in early September, and so it's okay to do that. Folks who still have not responded, then we could do a second notice in the 1st of October. Okay, then the middle of October, flotilla leadership could still contact the members who have not yet paid to see, hey, are you going to stay? Are you going to go? Are you going to retire? And that way then we can fill out the forms starting, if they decide to leave, we can fill out the forms starting in November, get those through the HR folks, and then begin to, so that everything is into the director's office by December the 1st, and they can get them off. We did have a problem a couple of years ago. If you remember, the government shut down right before, it was about, December 20th. And so there was a whole bunch of things that hadn't gotten processed yet. And so we had to get some adjustments on that. But hopefully that won't happen again as well. Any questions on dues? I know I harped on dues last night, but any questions on dues? Yeah, I really appreciate your all's help in doing that. The cleaner we can make it, the cleaner that bill will be when it comes out. I know the guy at National who does the dues billing, and he's a real hard guy to try and get refunds out of and that. So the cleaner we can make it, the better off it is. Let's talk about reporting, okay? The division commanders and the division board are entitled to and should receive financial information on the division's fiscal activities at each meeting. Same thing with the members of the flotilla. They're entitled to and should receive financial information on the flotilla's fiscal activities at each meeting of the flotilla. They're entitled to that. It's their money. They're entitled to that. The division commander or the flotilla commander, whichever unit we're talking about, will inform the financial officer what information they want and in what frequency they wish to receive it. though when information is provided, copies of bank reports and the financial recap should be provided with each report. And the reports, of course, should be complete, thorough, and most importantly, easily digestible, okay? Easily digestible. You can have pretty charts like Patrick does, and that'd be even better. So the finance officer will make a report, and again, copying it right out of the manual, will make a financial report at each regular meeting of the flotilla. The report includes all receipts and expenditures since the last report and the balance of funds remaining as of the day preceding the date of the meeting. Any emergency expenditures authorized by the commander included in the reporting expenditures shall be so designated in the report. Okay? But you are all entitled, whatever information you want, you're entitled to. Now, I probably wouldn't ask for a daily report. That would kind of be overkill, because we probably wouldn't talk to you for a month, because nothing would happen in that. Okay? All right, budgeting. Budgeting. Preparing an annual budget at any level allows for the payment of routine bills without having to convene the division board or a meeting of the flotilla just to disperse routine funds. Now, extraordinary, non-budgeted items would still need to go to the division board or the flotilla membership to be approved before the expenditure is made. But the key with the budget is the normal stuff can just be handled. We've approved it one time, and the normal stuff can be handled then. Routine expenditures could include dues, public education expenses, awards, office and copy expenses, etc. And you could also consider having a small contingency line item. For example, $100. And my flotilla, our flotilla manor, has a $100 contingency. So if somebody passes away, we can buy flowers, okay, or we can make a contribution, just without having to convene the membership to be able to do that. Nothing large, just a little bit. And annual budgeting, you see the last bullet point, is required at both the division and the financial, at the flotilla level. Finance officers at both levels may have to remind the leadership of this annual requirement, okay? And we'll just gently give you a nudge if you forget that we should prepare a budget. And you'll probably ask your finance officer to help you put some numbers together. Just, okay, give me something to shoot for or to shoot at and that. And we're always happy to help from that standpoint as well. Again, right out of the auxiliary manual, to plan expenditures properly, every auxiliary unit should, and Keith will tell you when you see the word should, that means must, okay? I have a clearly established annual budget. And there's an example of a flotilla budget contained in the Auxiliary Flotilla Procedures Manual, okay? Talking about that, the flotilla commander or the vice flotilla commander, when acting in the absence of the flotilla commander, is authorized to approve payment of all routine obligations set forth in the approved flotilla budget. That's the key. That's the key. Routine obligations include those incurred by the flotilla in conjunction with carrying out officially adopted policy of the flotilla and payments within the limits of the budget. And you can see the listing there. And you could just replace the word flotilla with division, and it would apply to both of those as well. Okay? So your finance officer can help you with at least putting some target numbers together that people could at least discuss, like we discussed last night from that as well. Now, we do have to make an annual report, though, okay? We have to use Form 7025, the financial report of an auxiliary unit. And the purpose, of course, is to provide an annual accounting of all funds received, dispersed, and retained, and should be completed in conjunction with the annual audit of the unit's financial records. The bar is also used to transfer responsibility and accountability of the unit funds upon change of the financial officer and or change in the unit leader. In the Form 7025, it's all about accountability, okay? You have the sign-offs, okay? The elected officer, whether it's the division commander or the flotilla commander, is saying, yes, this is it. The finance officer prepares it. The audit committee signs it. So it's accountability. It's just, hey, the right people have looked at it, and off we go. Whoops, that went too fast. Sorry for the small slide, but this is how it's printed in the auxiliary manual. The flotilla commander, you look at the, obviously each unit receiving its disbursement. Basically what this goes through and says, hey, you got to do it, okay? You got to do it. Now, there's a time frame mentioned in the auxiliary manual where the flotilla commander actually sends it directly to the DCO. We don't do that here in D8ER. We actually have, and you all have seen, hopefully you've seen this form. This is the cover sheet that goes with the annual report. But the flotilla commander sends it to the division commander. You guys look at it. Once you're comfortable with it, you send it up to the DCAP. DCAP looks at it. Once he's comfortable or she's comfortable with it, then they send it to the DCO. And that seems to work okay, and the director's okay with our flow and how we do that. So it's a little different than what the auxiliary manual says. Flotilla commander sending directly to the DCO. No, we don't want to bypass you guys and that from that standpoint. Okay. Standard Coast Guard Annual Reporting Form, the 7025. The date on the front of the page says March of 2010, but we've been filing this form for decades. In fact, if you turn it over on the back where the instructions are, it says 11/1997, and I think it's even older than that if I remember correctly. But you got to remember, you know, it's kind of a strange form, but you have to remember it has to work for the whole country, and that's why some of the line items may be a little strange to us because we just don't have these things, but other parts of the country do have. And we don't have to budget in the categories listed on the form, okay? On the expense side of the ledger, I suspect that none of you have utility expenses or building or repair expenses because we just don't own those. Down in Florida, there are flotillas that own buildings. So they have maintenance, they have utilities, they have all that. In fact, the flotilla of the year down in Florida, if you saw the picture on the auxiliary website, that's their building. That's the flotilla's building, and they've had that for years down there. So they have those, but we don't have those kinds of things. So you don't have to budget in their expense categories. No, we can do our own categories. We just have to we'll just alter the line items on the form is all we have to do. The math is not complicated once you think about it logically. You start with what you got, you add the receipts, you subtract the disbursements, and that leaves the ending balance, and it all should balance back to the bank records as well. Cash in, real simple. We should have money in a checking account, maybe some savings or CDs. I don't know any of our units that have trust funds, but hey, maybe there are some rich units that have trust funds out there. And then other cash items. That would be your beginning balance, and you would have the bank records that would support those as well. Cash receipts in, dues, PE course fees, cash contributions, if you're getting any, again, ideally you would want to run those through Aux A just so that it's all properly accounted for and that. I guess some units may run their own material center because there's, we got receipts from the sale of uniform flags or insignia, may get some receipts from conferences or meetings, and then other cash items, and that ends up at the beginning. And there's an instruction sheet, okay, on the back of the 7025 that explains each of those areas and what they are. Again, on PE fees, it's important to account for these separately, as there are restrictions on what the monies can be used for, and no social activities at all. I've said it once, I'll say it a couple more times, okay? And the auxiliary manual details the types of PE fees and how they should be reflected, and that's section L. There's a section on public education course fees and that, okay? But where you see L7 there, funds collected from the sale of public education materials may not be used for social activities. Funds may be used to support all other authorized activities conducted independent of the course, okay? So, and you've got those disbursements. So this is where at least on our 7025, I'll make some changes to the titles because we don't have buildings, we don't have utilities and that, but I'll add a couple of our things to it as well. And it all just balances back as well, okay? Now, for 3F and 6I, those are the general categories for other cash items or general disbursements. Feel free to attach an explanation as to what makes up that total, okay? And if it's really big, okay, I mean, if it's a couple of things, that's fine. And if you need to attach additional sheets, go ahead and attach additional sheets. That's okay. Or if it's just something real simple that you can just make a notation out to the side, that's fine. The more understandable you can make it, then each of the leaders above us understand, oh, exactly, this is what's going on as well. The audit process, ideally, should include a comparison of fiscal period to fiscal period, okay? So if significant variances period to period are noticed, the explanations also could be included in the comments to the financial report. Here at the district, when we present the budget, the proposed budget numbers, we go back and we present the last 5 years, how we've been doing in each of these budgeted categories, so that the district board has an understanding of, okay, is this a normal number or is it not a normal number? If it's not a normal number, why? What are we doing with that? And so that could be helpful at your units as well from that standpoint. And then the ending balance just needs to balance back to the bank balance and the bank account information. The financial report is signed by the preparer, who's normally the unit finance officer, and by the unit leader as the approving authority. In the event that either the finance officer or the unit leader is being relieved, the report is also to be signed by the appropriate relieving officers. And then here, the audit committee signs it and the director signs it as well. Now, just a quick hint, okay? The financial officer who is preparing, okay, if they are staying on for the next year, they are also the relieving officer, okay? And so we actually need to be, the finance officers need to be signing I'm sorry, I don't have a pointer, and the folks online couldn't see it anyway, but where you see the FN preparer, well, they're the FN relieving officer as well. Even if they're staying on, they're the relieving officer. If they're not staying on, then whoever's coming in then would sign at that point. And you could do the same thing with the flotilla commander in that second, okay? If they're staying on for a second year, okay, then they would be the relieving officer as well. Okay? It's kind of, when you think about it, at first you say, well, no, I'm still doing the job. But, well, no, because we're only appointed year to year from that, and we serve at the pleasure of the DCDR or the flotilla commander and that, okay? So just make sure you fill out all the lines on the bottom. And please, don't forget, turn it over, okay? Turn it over. Yes, you've got an inventory, got a materials inventory piece if you own any of these materials as well. A lot of folks forget to turn it over. One approach you can do in terms of, okay, how do I get all these numbers? You can set up a simple chart of accounts. You just have an Excel spreadsheet that has the various accounts talking about when things happen and the categories, and then those can get carried right over to the report. And you can do the same thing on the expenditure side as well. Okay, but whatever works, but just make it as easy as you can for yourself. That's the key. Whatever works for your finance officer. Now, we do have to have an audit. The National Standing Rules require annual financial reports to be audited and also require the unit financial records to be audited when the finance officer changes. The division commander or the flotilla commander should appoint an audit committee consisting of members of the division board or at the flotilla level, certain members of the flotilla who can review the records, the receipts, and the reports. Should the division commander or the flotilla commander forget that they need an audit committee, the finance officer should gently remind the elected leader that, hey, we need to have an audit committee to look at this. Here at the district level, it's the 3 DCAPs are the audit committee for the district. And then again, one last time, PE monies need to be used carefully and accounted for, and the audit committee should verify the proper use of those funds because we can't have a party with public education money. Now, just a couple of other things. From a potpourri standpoint, elected officers may not hold the appointed office of finance officer or materials officer, okay? That's just the rule, all right? If you want to be if you want to be on the blue side, don't take the job as finance officer or materials officer because you can't hold an elected office and these two as well. The finance officers are your fiscal voice. They keep the bridge and the members informed of the unit's fiscal activities. Finance officers are expected to know the rules, and they can assist you in following the fiscal rules, but more importantly, the finance officer is the first line of defense and protects the fiscal resources of the units. And just like any other staff officer, the flotilla staff officer for finance, if they have any questions, should reach out to your SOFNs, and the SOFNs, if they have a question, trust me, they get a hold of me as far as that goes, okay? Like I say, I will distribute this to your SOFNs so that they'll have that. If you have any questions, drop me an email or leave me a voicemail. Be more than happy. Any questions? Yes, sir.
One question. I could might be on the slide, but I can't read it. When somebody goes out and makes an expenditure, do they have to send the original receipt, or can they send a copy of the original receipt? If people pay with their credit cards, sometimes they want the original receipt for their credit card vendor. Can they have put the receipts on a copy machine and send you a copy?
Sure. That's how we do it as a district. In fact, most of the time, what happens is if a member of the board or any of the staff needs to get reimbursed out of district monies, they will scan the receipt, email it to the Commodore, and then he looks at it, says, yeah, it's okay, and then he'll send it to me electronically. And I haven't gotten a paper receipt from anybody for a long time. So I think that I don't know that there's any a prohibition on doing it that way. I just, saves on a lot of paper.
Thank you.
Yes, Commander.
I can't keep quiet. A couple thoughts to add. First of all, thank you, Mark. This is an important thing for everyone to understand and feel comfortable with, okay? There should be nothing scary about financial rules, okay? So if your finance officer is filling up, if you can't find someone to take on that role, make sure you find someone to hold their hand and bring them along. This is not a scary or a hard job. Particularly many of you shutdown, you know, losing members, getting people off the rolls. Rhonda went through that shutdown issue. She certainly learned her lesson, and certainly I know that lesson as well. So I'll tell you what, the second year, so 2019 going to 2020, when we were talking about maybe another shutdown, Rhonda was ready before, right? That was going to happen on the like 15th or something. So on the 14th, she was ready to come into work. That was her day off. She was coming to work anyway, make sure she pulled everybody off so that there would be no problems if the shutdown happened, okay? So she stands by, she's ready, it's blocked up on her calendar. She and Laura work it out at the holiday time. One of them's in the office, one's on vacation. But Rhonda is always there to make sure, right at the end of the year, she pulls everybody off that needs to come off the roll. Okay, so have faith in that happening. If that was a mistake, that time, definitely my office has learned that lesson.
And Commander, if I could just add,
Yeah.
I wasn't casting aspersions
No, I know,
on
I
your
know.
folks, because, I mean, we get everything in on time, don't we? Yes, we do. No, there are people sending stuff in Christmas week to try and get them off the books. Well, that year, I mean, Rhonda and Laura can only process what they got. And of course, the stuff has to go through Anita before it gets off. And I mean, you know, if we're waiting till the 10th of December to send it to Anita, things are gonna be late. Okay, that's why we've got to start earlier.
Yeah, thank you. I do see and sign every one of the 725s. I look at them and certainly I'm not auditing them, and certainly up the chain division commanders, you can't really glean much from that form because you have to believe what's on that form, which is why it's so important that an audit committee is assigned and that all the people are signed in that document. When I see this, even if I know someone carried over and that relieving officer spot isn't signed, it just makes me wonder, I shouldn't have to go back and figure out, is this person carrying over? Every line should be filled out, because I have to, your division commanders, your DCAPs, your DCO, have to trust that what's on that form is correct, so therefore, the audit committee is vital, okay? Now, on the audit committee front, don't let people freak out about the audit committee, okay? I'm in a number of volunteer organizations where we audit ourselves and everybody gets all scared and nervous, like, oh, God, I can't do budget, I can't. No, we're talking about common sense review of the documentation, right, Mark?
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
not talking about this forensic, freaking detailed audit of a thing. Just, what are the receipts, what money came in, what money came out? And if the people on that audit committee can in good faith say, yep, I see where the money came, I see where the money went, we're done. That's what we're talking about. It's not a detailed investigation or report, okay? But it's important that that audit happens. It is mandated by the standing rules. And I'll tell you what, I didn't realize that either. When I started digging around in these questions, and everyone kept saying to me, oh, no, we don't need to do an audit every year. No, every unit has to do an audit every year. It's in the standing rules, okay? That must happen. And then the last thing on that second page is the inventory sheet, okay? I look at those as well, and then that tells me something. So when I look at that sheet, I don't look and say, oh, well, this unit has a bunch of money coming in and they're doing really great. It tells me a little bit about the health of the unit when I see money coming in and going out. If you've got $300 left in the bank at the end of the year, or $3,000 left in the bank at the end of the year, that doesn't make any one of those units better or worse, right? But I tell you what, if I see $10,000 hanging out at the end of the year in a flotilla, I'm kind of wondering what's going on, right? We should be using those money to spend them. If a flotilla is saving that money for something, great, put a note on there. Say, we have excessive funds here, but we're saving it to do this. Or we tried, but we just can't spend this money. But that's the kind of thing division commanders, you guys should be asking when you see those big amount of money hanging out in accounts. What's going on with this money? How can we maybe spend it in a constructive and ethical way, right? I get it. It may be difficult to spend a bunch of money. I'm not saying we've got to spend it all. Just saying we should be asking each other these questions. On the inventory sheet, I see some crazy things on these inventory sheets, including somebody reported a broken projector that the Coast Guard in Section 3 that the government had given. If you have material from the Coast Guard that do ask also that you all think and work collectively, work with the OPs and the material officers throughout the district, because it happens frequently that you have a division or a flotilla even that's, again, holding on to 3 Oscars and 17 life preservers, and then this flotilla over here is asking my OTO to buy an Oscar. But meanwhile, there's 3 hanging out in someone's garage, right? So I ask that you guys start work together on that inventory and try to prevent that, because certainly any money I'm not spending on an Oscar means I can spend money on something else, okay? That's it for finance, but I do look at those forms, again, up the chain. You're not gonna see it. I don't expect anyone up the chain to really find any detailed problems. That's what the audit committee is for. And again, it's not about no one trusting, it's just, it's important for members to understand the point of it is to make sure there just are no, those funds are intended for good use and should be, are given in good faith. That's what we're trying to do. It's not that we think people are stealing funds, we don't think they're really going the wrong places. It's just, it's good practice and good measure to make sure they're there. And then, oh, the monies things, yes, there's no guidelines on how to distinguish those PE funds. So I'm gonna talk to the Commodore about this, but I think we should maybe be talking about a district rule that does require some kind of tracking. But anyway, your audit committee should be looking at that. That might be, it's an easy thing for the audit committee to look at, right? To say, hey, how much PE funds did you get? How much did you spend on morale events? Just make sure they didn't overspend it, okay? That's something your PE committee, your audit committee should just be looking at. And flotilla commander, certainly you should be asking that question of how they're holding those funds separately. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mark. Okay, now, yeah, well, that was good. That was very informative. Next is Keith Glosser, our DSOLP. And he's going to explain how to run a meeting. But have fun. I'm not saying the way he's going to explain it is boring, but throw some fun in there, right, Keith?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And so this is, seriously, I think we're going to have a little bit of fun. First of all, Mark did a great job, but I need you to use the other side of your brain. This is a completely different kind of a presentation. So I want everybody to get up, stand up, get up, everybody, up. Now shake it off. Come on, shake it off. Dual dance. Shake it off a little bit. All right, okay. Thank you. You can all be seated now.
You should have them clap and sit down and say thank you for that standing ovation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I missed that opportunity. So I know it's getting late in the day, and the last thing anybody really wants to talk about are meeting management tips. I got to tell you, we have some very senior leaders in the room, and we have some blooming leaders in the room as well. So there's just so much experience in the room. I don't want to be demeaning. I don't want to be talked down to. But I'll tell you what, is there anyone who's run a meeting, not had a meeting go south, sideways, or blow up? Has anybody had a meeting blow up? I'm seeing a bunch. Okay, so everybody's had a meeting. Everybody who's run a meeting has had a meeting blow up. That is not unusual because in a volunteer organization, it is literally like herding cats. We're all different. We all come from different backgrounds. We all bring different life experiences, and we sometimes have a difficult time communicating. Also, for the very first time in history, this organization has 5 generations in it working together. The greatest generation, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and now the Gen Z. Each demographic have very different life experiences. They communicate differently, and it is a monumental challenge to bring people together, actually communicate, and in a volunteer organization, move people along together. Volunteer organizations across the United States are failing, they're dwindling, and mostly because, one of Matt's watchwords, communication. We don't know how to communicate across generational lines. And running a meeting, it's an art. You've got to be a leader, you've got to cut through that, and you've got to penetrate. So first of all, before I continue to bore everybody, you should have 2 handouts that were passed out to you. 2 handouts. They look like this. Take a second and look at the graphy one. You don't have a handout? Kelly is.
Here, she had mine.
Okay. Yeah, raise your hand if you don't have the handouts. Okay, so okay. Well, they may not have made enough. So the good news is I'm told by Lynn that both of these handouts will be sent out. So if you don't have them now, you should be able to get them. So the first handout, it's called Blossard's Robert Rules Cheat Sheet. Okay, this is my cheat sheet. Normally, thank you, Matt. Well, Matt kind of does that. Normally, when I'm asked to give a presentation or teach, it's about the disciplinary process, or it's about contracts, something pretty technical, kind of like what Mark went through, kind of technical. You use, the one side of the brain. I haven't done this presentation in probably about 8 years, so I had to dust some stuff off. And the first thing, hang on a second here. The first thing that everybody needs to become familiar with are the Roberts Rules. So the very first outline you have, it's a cheat sheet. It goes through, and I'm not going to go through all of this because I don't want to put you to sleep, but if you want to adjourn, basically, what do you say? How do you move it? Do you interrupt the speaker to make that kind of a motion? Yes or no? Is a second needed? Is it debatable? Is it amendable? Is there a vote needed? And so what you have is just a quick cheat sheet. And you're not going to use all of these, but I tried to put in all the ones that could come up, and certainly the ones that do come up in just a normal flotilla or division meeting, or even district meeting. So it's a handy little reference guide, and sometimes things can get complicated, and when they do, this is a great sheet to have. Also, if you turn the page, and again, I'm not going to go through this stuff, but the heading is Procedure for Handling a Main Motion. You have a step-by-step process on how to do motions in a meeting. Who does what? How's a motion brought? The next page goes into how to accomplish what you want to do in meetings. So you have the main motion, how do you amend a motion, how do you refer something to committee, how do you postpone things. If you turn the page, it keeps going. How do you recess, how do you adjourn, point of order. You don't hear that very much in meetings, point of order or anything like that. But anyway, this is not classified information. Robert's Rules is out there, it's online. This I tailored to the auxiliary several years ago. It's been very helpful. Use it, make copies of it, pass it out to your leadership, pass it out to your members. If everybody's on the same page on what the expectations are in running a meeting, it's amazing what you can accomplish. It's communication and setting expectations. That's 90% of getting things to go well in a meeting. And your leadership ties it all together and gets it done. So anyway, I won't belabor that anymore. But Robert's Rules of Order, very, very important. Know the basics, and it's even better if your membership knows the basics too. Secondly, all members need to be respectful. I know meetings can sometimes degenerate into side squabbles, or if there's a major disagreement, some things can spill over. But we all need to try to be professional, and we all need to stay respectful of one another. It's sometimes hard to do. This is going to shock you, but yes, there are cliques in flotillas and in divisions. Some people don't feel as if they're as included, or perhaps other people have special privileges. Fight against that. Fight against that. Try to be respectful of all the membership in your meeting, and it will come back to you as a leader. Next, members need to talk and go through the flotilla commander, the division commander, whoever it may be. That role, your role is as a facilitator, okay? This isn't rank, it's an office. You're the facilitator and leader of the unit. So your job is to keep things moving and to run the meeting. And so, you know, if things are flying around, everything should go through you. If somebody has a motion, it's being directed to you. If there's discussion, you've got to control it. Keeping control of the meeting is absolutely primary if you're going to get anything done and if you're going to move things forward. So things need to come up this way and not go among the membership. Keep the meeting moving and on time. How many people have been in a meeting or somebody gets elected and you're just like, let's say a flotilla meeting is supposed to run, or a division meeting is supposed to run 2 hours. And, you have an agenda and you put through that. But, ever since, member Coffee Pot got elected, well, they're running 3 hours because he can't just seem to get through the agenda in time. And, and everybody's like, oh, geez, here we go. And, go off on a tangent and stuff like that. Try to keep the meeting moving, keep it going, and try to stay on schedule as much as possible. So in this, I just threw in as a little tidbit, every motion has a minimum of 6 steps. You've got the handout, and so, you can read it at your leisure. It's also kind of in the cheat sheet that I provided. But there's form to this, and try to take it seriously, because if you set the expectation that during the meeting portion, okay, you're not going to spill over fellowship and other things aren't going to come in. If you take it seriously and set the expectation that we're going to get down to business, again, things should go much, much smoother. And there we go. Be organized. Have the meeting minutes done beforehand. Try to have an agenda. I've been to meetings when I was decap, and I moved around a little bit and went to other people's meetings. I saw some units winging it. I mean, you know, it's like, oh, we didn't have, you know, the minutes done, and they hadn't had minutes done, you know, for like the past 2 meetings, and they didn't have an agenda, or the agenda was, you know, 3 bullet points. Try to have a professional agenda, put your vision on it, have the meeting minutes done. Meeting should start on time, meeting should end on time. Just some basic things that you all know, but actually will help in setting the expectations. This is always a problem. Some meeting banter. You know, you always have the class clown. Okay, you know, so some meeting banter is good, right? A little oil to, you know, to keep it fun and to keep it interesting, but
Point to me.
because you're fun and interesting.
I like that.
But there's a line, right? There's a line there, and then you know, you as the leader, you're like trying to management. It's like okay, you know, you're right at the line. We got to pull it back, and so literally you're kind of herding and directing. So again, you know, it literally is an art. Even though there's a roadmap, every leader is going to apply it differently. Every person has their own style. Bob, your style is probably very different than Clyde's style. I mean, everybody, make it your own. You're the leader, and you have the opportunity to run the meeting the way you want to. But these are basic guideposts that will really help you not have a meeting go south on you or blow up. Fellowship before the meeting. I know a lot of units do that. It's fantastic, but again, try to make a bright line between yucking it up, fellowship, all the stuff that brings us together, that you know, helps with the bonding, and then the actual business portion of the meeting. You know, it should be, you know, like somebody flicks a switch. Let's get down to business. So, know your audience. Every member of a flotilla can participate and vote, and I think most of the members know that. But I've been to division meetings where people show up and they don't understand that only the board in a division meeting votes. So if you're, as division commanders, and I know this sounds kind of goofy, but again, it's setting expectations. I would start, when I was a division commander, I started every meeting reminding everyone that showed up who could vote. But I also wanted all the other people that came to come back. So that's the opportunity when your FSOs can meet with your SOs of, you know, and do planning and coordinating. So they may not have a vote, but they're all there together, and they're there together with all the leadership. What a great coordinating opportunity. The division meetings are absolutely essential to bring the flotillas together. There are a lot of flotillas where they, at least again, when I was decap, they would, I don't want to say avoid the division, but you know, they were very siloed. You know, the flotilla would be walled off over here, and they didn't want interference from the division. You know, so these are all opportunities, but you have to set expectations. I went to a division meeting where all these people showed up, and as they started to vote on stuff and everything like, people, you know, people from the back, everybody was participating, but it didn't count. And so suddenly they felt like their voice wasn't being heard, and they were honked off, and so they didn't come back. You know, it's so set the table, set the expectations, make sure people know in the room who can vote, why they can vote. They're part of the board, you're not, but I'm glad you're here because, spell it out. You can, get with your counterparts in other flotillas or with the division staff officer, and hopefully that can all be coordinated and then become a big event. I just threw in an example of a agenda. This is an agenda that our flotilla uses. Our division uses something that's very, very similar. They don't have to be that detailed, but again, to show how important all of the offices are, they're all labeled. So if somebody holds a position, we try to recognize them on the agenda and make sure that they feel like, they're important and of course what they're doing matters. Again, that's style and that's just one example. Okay, so try to stay mission focused. So my experience has been that auxiliaries love to volunteer. A lot of us are in other volunteer organizations, whether it's the Manning Corps, whether it's the Moose Lodge, whether it's the Elk Lodge, whether it's Boy Scouts, whether it's Masons or the Knights of Columbus, or so you have all of these service clubs. And they all have great ideas, and they're all doing good work, and they're all doing things out in the community. And so a lot of our members like to bring back ideas. Some are great, some are not so great. But we have to make sure that as a leader, you keep your unit focused on Coast Guard activity, Coast Guard auxiliary activity. You don't want to, I've seen it a few times, spiral into other causes or other things, and it diverts a lot of thought and time and resources away from the actual missions. Obviously, this is a no-brainer. Go through the chain of leadership and management. As a leader, you've got to stress that. So many feuds pop up, so many issues pop up as legal. I get involved in a lot of the disciplinary actions. And frankly, a lot of them are just miscommunication, hurt feelings that escalate. And of course, you always try to work those out at the lowest level. But if everyone were to go through the chain of leadership and management and try very, very, and of course, things are it's not going to happen 100% of the time, but if you're consistent in doing it, and as a leader, if you're stressing that, and making sure that that happens, it will make your life much, much easier. And also remember, and this kind of goes to the click thing, position-based, not person-based. So much time, you have that person in the flotilla and the division that's everywhere. They're in everything. They have so much energy. I'm not that guy, but there are some people out there that just, they're involved with everything. And it's so easy to cut a corner. It's more efficient. It still gets done. Guard against that. You want to be efficient and you want it to get done, but go through the chain of leadership and management. That's showing respect for the offices. As a leader, your primary responsibility is to support the auxiliary, support your unit staff and the leadership and the staff officers that are under you and reporting to you. Don't cut them out of the process, even if it's expedient. Try not to do that. Position-based, not person-based. we also have plenty of people, and in my units too. I am not very charismatic. There are some people that are just, they shine. They're so charismatic, and people are drawn to them like magnets. They're natural leaders. Then you have schleps like me that have to, work at it just to get a tiny voice out and stuff in between. So, again, it's not the person, it's the position that they hold. Look at the office. Look at the office for a chain of leadership and management. Now, also, I don't know if every unit is like this, and at least the units that I've seen and been involved with kind of go through waves. You get some people in there that are like super hua, former Army, so like really, really gung-ho, super hua, they come in, this is the military, all this kind of stuff. The first time I went to NACO, I shouldn't say this, but first time I went to NACO, and one of our leaders was up there, he kept talking about how we were the tip of the spear. And I'm just like, I was in the 18th Airborne Corps, and we weren't the tip of the spear. How am I the tip of the spear? So you got to keep it in perspective. And you're going to have people that come into your units. Some are ex-military like me. Some are wannabes, or they think that the auxiliary is something that it is not. Make sure that you stress, we are not the military, but like the slide says, we're not a club either. We are in between. And that's very difficult to understand. I've met people who've been in the auxiliary 15 years that think we're a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. We're not. The Auxiliary Association is, but the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary is not. We're a governmental unit that is a part of the United States Coast Guard. There it is. We're a non-military wing of the United States Coast Guard. So again, set expectations, and as a leader, make sure you don't go too far to the military side, but also, please, please, don't go to the club side either, because both sides can get us in trouble. You have to guard against that. And so you have to find your sweet spot. And maybe some people come to mind in your flotilla or your division or whatever that, may have the misconception. These are great teaching opportunities to get people on the same page. It doesn't mean, you shun them. It doesn't mean that you don't work with them. Work with them, try to educate them. Do what you can. I put the next one in there. Is your meeting open to anyone? Because there was a flotilla, and they're discussing flotilla and Coast Guard business, and uninvited, they had like 12 people just come in and sit down. And of course, they weren't invited. It wasn't, they weren't wanting to join, and they were kind of being disruptive. And I got a phone call. Hey, our meeting's blowing up. Why is your meeting blowing up? Well, because of these people. Well, why do you have people that you don't want in your meeting? Well, can we ask them to leave? Well, heck yeah, this is your meeting. So if your meeting, even if it's in a public place, a lot of people have agreements with state agencies to use a building, or some people meet at fire stations or library. College. It's across the board. But you're holding a meeting, whether it's a division meeting, whether it's a flotilla meeting, this is not an open meeting. So if somebody crashes your meeting, feel free to ask them to leave politely. You know, I mean, but you can politely ask somebody to leave. And again, if they're not, if there's some sort of a protest, I don't think that's happened yet, but in these times, you never know. If somebody comes in, feel free, and if they won't leave or it can't be handled, feel free to stop the meeting and get out of the situation. So that one has not happened yet, and I hope it does not. So I get this question a lot. I have a question in the back. Yes, sir.
My question is directly related to your last point. Someone refuses to leave, we pause the meeting, is it okay to contact local law enforcement to ask them to leave?
So the question is, if somebody comes in the meeting and they're asked to leave, can you pause the meeting and wait for law enforcement or some other authority to come and remove them? And again, it's all situational. So yes, but it depends. It depends on the circumstance. You as the leader, you have to read it, and that could happen. And again, there's a way to pause the meeting and all that good stuff right in here. But yeah, you can do that. Again, it's situational, and as leaders, we all have to think on our feet. And yeah, you can do that. And okay, we'll go right here. Go ahead, Pat. Yeah.
Piggyback on that, would it be, from a legal standpoint, would it be considered a conflict, and I'm talking in my specific occurrence, if the flotilla commander is a police officer?
So, right, well, okay, so the question is, if the flotilla commander, and I'll broaden it a little bit, or someone in the flotilla is a peace officer or a police officer who has the authority to do that, can they step in? Well, first of all, as you all know, even if you're a police officer, if you go to flotilla meetings, you can't carry a weapon. You can't have your gun or anything like that. But if you're asking me, can you take one hat off and put another hat on? The answer would be yes. Yes, you could do that. Good question. There was another hand. Yes.
So the opposite then, if,
And I'm sorry, could you?
the opposite then, if someone is there and they're not creating a problem of any kind, it's not required to remove them, they don't have to go. If they're sitting in on the meeting, like when you meet in a public place, is it best that we ask them to leave, or is it okay that they stay?
Right. So again, the question I believe is, if somebody were to come into your meeting and they're not being disruptive, do you have to ask them to leave? Or if they're just sitting there minding their own business, can you leave them alone? Well, first of all, it's a good question, and I think it depends. As the leader, you would want to approach them and say, "Hi, can I help you? Why are you here in the meeting?" So I think you need to do a little due diligence. Excuse me, if the answer is, "I've always been curious about this, can I sit in?" Sure. If the answer is this the PTA meeting and all that kind of stuff? Well, then you said no. I mean, so I would do a little investigating and see what their intent is. If and this is just me, okay, but it's a leadership decision. If they're not there to check out the Coast Guard, or they have any sort of a real genuine purpose to be there, I would ask them to leave. And you have to understand, and this is going to sound really weird, but you know the paper you generate and the technically your agenda, the minutes, the forms that you send up to DIROCs and they look at, Do you know you have to do a Freedom of Information request from the United States government if you're the public to look at those? So this is it's just, I mean, so no, you know, your meeting is for your members generally, but good question, good question.
Doesn't it also depend on if you were talking about sensitive information at the meeting?
Right, so the Commodore said, wouldn't it depend on if you're talking about sensitive information at the meeting? Again, very good question. It would, I mean, generally, if somebody shouldn't be in your meeting, they shouldn't be in your meeting. But I think that's a great point. You have to be very sensitive when you certainly are going to be talking about things that shouldn't be discussed outside of the meeting. So you want to be protective of that information. And so I think it's even more important to make sure that your audience is appropriate. Yes, ma'am.
You don't mind if I stay seated? Lunch was kind of heavy. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Yeah.
I have a question about most of our flotillas. We have our dates and times posted on the webpage, on the Coast Guard webpage, auxiliary webpage.
Right.
And usually in our agenda, one of the first acts after the Pledge of Allegiance is introduction of guests. If a bunch of people showed up and we didn't recognize them, before the meeting starts, you have something called fellowship, where we all introduce ourselves, and that's when we normally approach these people. If they're not, if you've never seen them before, we are about to have a meeting. Are you interested in an auxiliary? That's why we're here. That's the time you're supposed to be snooping. And of course, if they weren't aware, but they want to sit in on it, personally, I would allow them to stay and include them as guests. Have them sign in, consider it a recruiting opportunity, and then make them stand up and introduce themselves when we get down to that first 10 minutes of the meeting after the pledge and everything. Make them stand up and talk about themselves. And then, talk about, and of course, as they're talking about themselves, brag a little bit about the auxiliary at that point in time. They may not be there for negative, they may be newsy, of course, but we're already publishing or have published our information on the internet. The date, the time, and place where we have our meeting, so it's already public knowledge.
That's awesome. I want to be in your flotilla. I would have handled it the exact same way. Again, what you talked about, and I don't know if everybody heard, but in your scenario, you did the due diligence ahead of time during the fellowship. You approached them, you asked them, you found out their intent. Once you found out, it's cool and stuff like that, you invited them to stay. Now, the caveat would be if you're going to discuss something that might not be appropriate in that particular meeting, which is rare, but does happen. Then you could either say come back another time, or when it's time to discuss that sensitive information, ask them to step out because of a sensitive conversation, and then when it's over, have them come back in. Absolutely, yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. Fantastic. No, I like it. Yeah. Michael.
One thing also to consider, review what's on your websites that's available to the public to see. I'm not sure what's going on, but I got an email yesterday. They're reviewing all the national websites to make sure we don't have even email addresses available to the public. So there's ways you can put it behind the member zone. So you might have stuff like you want to announce where you're meeting and when you're meeting, but you might not necessarily want them to see the agenda. So review your websites and see what actually should be made available to the general public and what should be behind the member zone. And I'm not sure what's prompting the review of all the national sites, but yesterday So that's just an observation from what I know they're doing to the national website.
Michael, I think what they're doing is trying to keep us from putting the CG Ops net emails on.
Well,
We've got to have some kind of contact information on it.
all I know is they're looking at taking personal information out of the public domain.
Well, if you've got a
Here we go.
flotilla or division email address specific for that.
Yes, and that's
Right.
there's a way you can do that without it saying random
Right.
interest.
Right, and again, Michael Brzezinski, fabulous points, and I think, you know, reviewing what you are putting out there and what is being shown to the public, probably a good idea, especially in these times. Times are changing, so probably good to review that. We're about out of time, and so don't all clap because we're about out of time. But I do want to get through a couple more slides because this does come up. This stuff comes up, and it can rub flotilla leadership the wrong way, and it can rub division leadership the wrong way. If you're a flotilla commander, you are in charge of that unit. You are voted in, and you are the head of that unit for your term. You know, just because somebody, you know, who's been around for a long time and who's got, you know, four stripes or a star comes in, they don't take over the meeting, okay? You're the flotilla commander or you're the division commander. You're in charge of the meeting. It's your agenda. And I hear complaints. We want the senior members to be in those meetings to be able to help mentor, but they shouldn't be in the meetings to create ill will or to cause disruption or to take things over. So, for instance, I put down a non-flotilla member, let's say a division commander, visiting a flotilla. You're a guest at that flotilla. And frankly, when I was a district captain and I would go around and go into other flotillas, I sat in the back because I didn't want anybody taking cues from me or looking at me or looking to me. I wanted the leadership to lead. I mean, I think that's very important. And that comes to mentorship, okay? As a leader, you know, if you're going to a flotilla or something like that, you're there for that leadership to draw on. If they get stuck or need help or need advice, you're there. And I think that's very comforting. So remember to praise publicly and counsel privately. Nobody wants to be embarrassed. Nobody wants to be called out. So if you're a flotilla leader and you as division commanders who've been around the block, you see flubs and stuff going on, don't freak out. You don't even have to interrupt the meeting. Just make a little note. And after the meeting, or if there's a break, take that opportunity to pull the leader aside, or maybe afterwards, depending on what the deal is, you know, and do some mentoring, do some counseling. You know, don't say, "Oh, you goofed that up. You're an idiot." No, you just, you know, use these opportunities to mentor and educate, and in doing so, I think another watchword: inspire. Inspire. And it's all about grooming and retaining the best. So we have our leadership spots filled, succession planning, and you guys can go on and gals can go on to better things, bigger things, and hopefully all be right here someday. And it is a lot of fun. So with that, that is the end of my presentation. Thank you. It's kind of dry, and I know a lot of you are literally experts So I hope you appreciated my comments. Bob?
Two questions, both involve motion. Chair cannot make a motion, is that correct?
So the chair is not supposed to be able to make a motion. That is correct.
At a division meeting, can a non-voting member make a motion?
A non-voting member should not be able to make a motion. It should come from a board meeting, but that doesn't mean that the non-board members, can't suggest it, talk about it, and then talk to a board meeting to raise it. But the board is in a division meeting is the one that actually will be participating on the record. Good questions. Very good questions. Yes, sir.
Can a division commander, can he actually step down or step out and let the vice make the motion and then come back in afterwards? In other words, as a mason, we let the master step down, put somebody else up there so that he can go out and sit down and make the motion. And then after everything's done, then they switch back.
Okay, well, first of all, I know about that. I also am a Mason, so it's nice to meet you on the level. And I know exactly what you're talking about. The short answer is no, you should not do that. And for everybody that heard, the flotilla commander or division commander kind of check out, as it were, leaving the vice in command, so then that person not in the capacity could actually make a motion. Well, no, we don't. It's not clean that way. And again, appropriate in a club. But it's not appropriate in our proceedings. Good question, though. Good question. Yes, and I think last question, because I know I'm going to get the cane. Go ahead.
Okay. Meetings that are normally run by Robert's rules, I've seen cases where when it comes to approval of the minutes, they say, are there additions, deletions, or corrections? If not, they'll stand as submitted. Is that legal?
Well, so when it comes to financials, you're approving a report as submitted. You're not approving what's in the report. There's a distinction, and I think the way you said it would be appropriate.
Yeah, this is strictly for minutes.
Yes. And it's a nuance, but only about half the units do it. But yes, technically, they're approving what's been submitted by the finance officer. People have reviewed it, the membership has reviewed it, and they are approving entering that into the record. They're not voting as to its veracity. You see the difference? Okay, very good with that. Thank you very much. Again, very, very dry. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Commander, would you like to have the last few minutes?
Yes, and I know I talk a lot, but I do have just a few things. I'd say Laura Simpson wants me to remind you all to process your travel claims as quickly as humanly possible after this weekend. And that is because we've been told that any travel claims received after the 17th will not get paid until after the transition in financial systems, which will be sometime in November. So for the month of October, essentially, there's going to be really no financing happening in the Coast Guard. So do your level best, get them to her. She has a lot of authority in the process that we're doing it now. She can make a lot of minor corrections on your behalf. So if you get stuck, just send it to her and put a note in your email. I didn't know this, or I didn't have that, or didn't know how to do this. Laura will likely be able to just fill in the blanks for you and take care of it. Okay? I can't guarantee that will be processed before the cutoff, but we will do our very best, and she is prepared to work extra hours this week to make sure, or this coming week to make sure that travel claims are submitted on time. Again, for the first-time travelers, don't sweat it. Don't sweat it. Just get everything you can together, do your best, be certainly honest and ethical with what you got, send it off to Laura. Laura is a sweetheart. Laura knows the rules backwards and forwards, and Laura will not let any one of us make a incorrect process. She'll help you out, and she'll correct what needs to get corrected. In fact, she will send them back to me if I don't claim the 20 miles from my house to the airport. She'll send it back to me and make me do it again. So Laura's got us covered there. I mentioned this in the spring. I want to be really clear, and for the flotilla class, commander's class, I need everybody to really do two things when you're thinking about security checks and new member checks. I don't know if every member understands this, but every year we run a security review on every member of the auxiliary. So I see rap sheets on everybody. And that means rap sheets from when you were 20 years old and arrested for disorderly conduct back in 1962. And I see a lot of that. And that's fine. That happens, right? Those members are already in, not a problem. We're dealing with it. So anyone that's been reviewed before, anyone that's an existing member, I am going to see everything come up every year, but I'm not reevaluating that every year. If you've been accepted and you're a member and that information is not new coming up in the annual report, then I don't do anything about it. Rhonda checks it, says, nope, nothing new here, and she doesn't even give it to me. She only gives them to me when there's something new. Now, surprisingly, that happens quite often. People, surprisingly, get arrested a lot in the auxiliary. And they need to understand, your members need to understand, it is required to identify to the chain of leadership when that happens. Because no matter what that arrest is, any pending arrest is something that could theoretically prevent your decision to become a member, or my decision to make you a member. And certainly that means any kind of arrest, even if it's a misdemeanor situation, is something that we should be evaluating for security reasons. Because when you go through that security check, what we're doing is the Coast Guard is saying, this person has the authority and is accepted to be unaccompanied on board a Coast Guard unit. And when you have that kind of power and access, there's significant information and things that you can do that are very dangerous and can be harmful to our national security, our local security, and to members at that unit, okay? So we need to be evaluating every time somebody has a problem. It is a responsibility. It's not clear currently, it's not clear in the manual. It will be clear in the new revision of Chapter 3, which is pending with approval right now. But it is a responsibility of every member to notify, okay? And then I will evaluate it. New members, when you are interviewing new members and you are having them fill out the form, again, the form is about to change as well, but that form says, have you been convicted of a felony or a major misdemeanor? Major misdemeanor does not have a clear definition anywhere. That is, right? That's not a real term. And every state is gonna call everything differently. My best advice is to tell that person, if you've ever been arrested, even if the charges were dropped or expunged, because I do see sometimes, not always, but some states are still reporting back if things are expunged, or maybe how it gets coded in that state might be different. I still frequently see things that come back, and I'll call that person and say, hey, what happened here? And they'll say, oh, no, that's been expunged. And I'll say, no, I see it, so you need to tell me about it. So in order to make sure those processes go through, if they don't have to tell you or the flotilla commander or the HR officer, they can send an email directly to my office, or to my office is the best way to do it. Because it just clears it up. Because every time I see an arrest, I've got to spend time and think about it, right? And I do. And I think about if someone's been arrested 5 times when they were 25 years old, but now they're 65 years old, that sounds like they should be okay. But it's my job and my due diligence is to check in on that and just see what happened there, what's going on, okay? So understand that, and make sure people know that and members know that. We're checking, we're looking, and new members should be reporting, even though it doesn't say it on the form, really is going to help them to report any arrest, whether they're prosecuted or not. Annual forms, we talked about the annual financial forms. You're gonna be submitting soon those annual officer forms, right? 7007 maybe. Those things come to me as well. I look at those as well. Remember, be mindful, you don't have to fill in that whole thing. Sometimes I see these units that have got everybody doing double duty and it's 4 people filling in all these positions, okay? Maybe that's a legitimate choice in your flotilla. Maybe it's if someone's feeling that they've got to fill in all the gaps, right? You don't have to fill in all the gaps. Cover the big information, get your vice commanders and your commanders, get your FN and your MA, and then figure out what that unit's gonna focus on and let somebody focus on a subject area, okay? Because I see those and I do. I'll call back or I'll talk to the Commodore and I'll say, hey, this unit's got, there's only 4 people total on this officer form, okay? And that should be sending flags. Same thing for division commanders. When you're seeing that in flotillas, that should be raising flags for you. It raised flags for me. Gear reporting, there's a new feature in Aux Data 2. We don't have a lot of detail on it yet. The OTO will be working with the ops and MA folks on this, but PPE should now be in the near future, be being tracked in Aux Data under individual persons. So when it's assigned to somebody, we could track it a little bit easier. Don't know the details on that. Don't ask me anything else. Don't freak out about it. But if you're in Aux Data and you see that functionality, that is there. And change to, I have a note, but I can't read what it says. I'll stop. Are there any questions for me that I can help resolve right now or get an answer to later? Bob Clancy made a really good point this morning after my first comments. That SOP that the sector just revised was not possible without significant work of members from the divisions that support, so who we're talking about, 5 and 6, right? Those folks really helped write that as well to make sure it was right. So that was a joint effort, and I want you all to understand that's what it is. So if there's something in that SOP, first of all, do you all understand what I'm talking about when I say this SOP from sector? I see some no's, and I'm guessing you guys don't, right? So an SOP is a standard operating procedure. The sector is required to publish by the Commandant's rule guidance for the auxiliaries operating in their AOR. This document should be a one-stop shop for each one of you in your boat crew and your air crew to identify what the rules are. So if the sector says, in this area, I'm not going to allow night operations, it should be documented in that document. If the sector says, we want the auxiliaries to call in every 45 minutes on this radio channel, it's going to be found there. It's not. It's every 30 minutes, I'm assuming, on a specific channel, right? So, and it'll tell you how to request orders, it'll tell you these other items. So that's a standard operating procedure. It should be available everywhere. I hope, does anyone know where can members see it? Anybody? Should be on the ADR website. Mr. Ventris? Okay. So where is it on the website? Okay. So it's under operations, it's something like, it is a document that should be looked at. It's also, that kind of information, while it's not secret, it is certainly something that it should be guarded in some way, right? It's behind the wall? Yep. Behind the wall, because that's the kind of thing that lets others know how the military and the Coast Guard operates. We don't always want to do that, okay? But share that with your boat crews, make sure everyone understands that. But also, Bob wanted me to make sure, and I was remiss in not saying it, but that represents that handwork and the hard work of those two divisions.
Can
Yeah.
I just say, there was a lot of people that did a little bit on that, but Mike Phillips is the person that put a lot of time into that work.
Okay.
So if he's watching.
So thank you, Mike Phillips, if you're out there. Or thank him when you see him, please. Okay. Any more questions for the director? Complaints? Travel order questions? Finance questions? Hurricane questions?
Done.
All right.
Okay, one more thing. Randy, the portal from Patrick Brown's metrics are on the website.
The entire D-Train portal.
The entire D-Train portal is now on our website. There is a,
D-Train portal,
on the D-Train portal.
under D-Train portal.
You got it. Did we all get that?
There's a D-Train portal?
Yeah, what? That's news to me. Okay, everybody, it's 1600. They have to come reset the room for tonight. Thank you very much for coming, and you have a wealth of information in front of you. Let's go have fun tonight. Thank you. And for those online that are watching, thank you.